What's going on, guys? I'm Pete, and welcome to Retro Game Addict. For gamers of a certain age, many of us remember the days of saving your game data on physical memory cards. They were mostly prominent during the 5th and 6th console generations, and they came in a variety of shapes, sizes, and capacities. Most look pretty pedestrian and normal, but there are some rare and downright wacky ones out there that I'm going to go over today in this video. I'm also expanding this list to cards that fit into a console's memory card slot or aid in its memory expansion as well, just to keep things interesting. I'm going to start from normal and work my way up to the strange ones, so here are 10 of the weirdest video game console memory cards. First up is the Sega VMU for the Dreamcast and the Sony PocketStation for the PlayStation 1. I'm going to group these two together since they're both very similar. First and foremost, both of these had the ability to store game saves, but unlike a traditional memory card, both sport an LED display, physical face buttons, and expanded features such as a real-time clock, built-in flash memory, sound capability, and the ability to communicate with other respective VMUs or pocket stations. These are pretty nifty devices for the time and were very forward-thinking for both companies. Both units supplemented the supported home console games by acting as an auxiliary display and can also be standalone mini handheld consoles when they were removed from their home console counterparts. The VMU and the Pocket Station are pretty normal today, so let's work our way up towards the weird with our next entry. Next up are the expanded memory cards. These came in a few variants from some third-party companies. These expanded cards feature physical displays on them with distracting red analog displays. Here we have the memory card 32X for the N64 and the massive memory card 1440 for the PS1, both by third-party company Performance. Aside from being much larger than the standard N64 controller pack, the memory card 32X is over double the size and features a teardrop display, the same as the GameShark, indicating the different pages or channels on the memory card. The massive memory card 1440 is only slightly larger than a standard PS1 memory card, but it features the same weird-looking teardrop analog display. Maybe it's just me, but I didn't know anyone back then that wanted one of these bizarre-looking cards, even with the added storage capacity. I have to give it to them that they at least align with their respective console's design language. The same can't be said for the next expanded memory card, though. Here is the Mad Catz 8X memory card for the PS1. It has a reflective silver finish with one large red face button and a small analog display. Mad Catz wasn't known for their quality back then, and this thing looks like a cheap bootleg that you'd get at like a flea market, not something that came from a third-party company. One thing that it does have going for it though is that it kind of reminds me of Ultraman. I don't know, something about that silver and red color scheme just kind of works for it in that regard. But again, I could see most kids just opting for an official card over one of these things. Next up are the backup memory cartridges. They were available on a variety of consoles like the Sega CD, Saturn, N64, DS, and DS Lite. These cards provided extra memory for consoles to better handle demanding games or applications. But in the case of the Sega cartridges, they also allowed games to be saved on them, which technically makes them memory cards. First we have the Sega CD Backup RAM Cart. It's in a typical Sega Genesis cartridge shell and fits right into the Genesis's cartridge slot. It has the Sega CD's blue branding on the left portion of the label and just looks pretty cool in my opinion. The Sega Saturn had a similar backup cartridge of its own, the Sega Saturn Backup Memory Card. Like the Sega CD backup, the Saturn backup card fits into the Saturn's cartridge slot and also allows the ability to save certain games. Both of these cartridges are somewhat rare these days, and for good reason. Maybe it was just me, but I always assumed that they were just RAM expanders and nothing else. The fact that you're able to save games on them makes them very useful to gamers that want to save progress on games that don't usually allow you to do so. Next we have the SD memory card adapter for the Nintendo GameCube. It was an official first-party Nintendo accessory available online in Japan only. It allowed users to transfer data from your GameCube to PC, which was very forward-thinking for the time. It had limited support, only being compatible with Animal Crossing E+, which was an expanded version of the original Animal Crossing, and Pokemon Channel, granting you the ability to transfer your Pokemon pictures from Pokemon Channel to your PC, if that was your sort of thing. There's plenty of GameCube SD card adapters available today, but again, this was almost unheard of over 20 years ago, let alone from a first party like Nintendo. Next up is the N64 Ice Climber Controller Pack. This one isn't so much strange, but it's ultra rare. It's essentially a standard Nintendo 64 controller pack with ROM data of Ice Climber preloaded onto it to play in the Japanese version of Animal Crossing, Dobutsu no Mori. This was an official Nintendo released item, and a total of 30 of them are suspected to exist. These rare controller packs were given away to a total of 30 winners of a Dobutsu no Mori writing contest held by Nintendo Dream Magazine. The Ice Climber controller pack's label adorns the Ice Climber cover art from the Famicom release and has a unique end label as well. Information is very limited about this controller pack, but there's a really good video by YouTube channel Hunter R that goes more in depth about the history of this super rare card. I threw a link to it in the description and I suggest you check it out. With that being said, let's move on to the next one. Now we're getting into the weird. Here we have the sports memory cards. First are the ones from Interact for the PS1 and the N64. There's basketball, hockey, football, and baseball. These are just your standard third-party memory cards with an expanded plastic mold of a ball or a hockey mask. Mad Catz also had a similar football memory card for the PS1 as well. There's nothing remarkable at all about these, and they're super gimmicky. I could see if you're into sports, but did anyone really think these looked good protruding from the front of your PS1? Or worse yet, hanging off the back of your N64 controller? They just look so out of place and goofy. But I guess the joke's on me because they seem to have been pretty popular back then. I'm just glad I never hopped on that bandwagon. Here we have the Onimusha 3 PS2 memory card by Hori. I'll be the first to admit that I've never played an Onimusha game, but I do know the series is highly regarded, and it looks pretty cool too. Hori is known for quality, and the memory card itself looks like a pretty standard fare PS2 card with the Onimusha branding adorned on it. And this card must have been a big deal because it came in a traditional Japanese wooden case. But all that aside, the strangest thing about it is that blue tassel hanging off the end of the card. I get that it goes with the historic Japanese aesthetics of the game, but it isn't the most practical to have this dangling off the front of your PS2 console. It seems to be a collector's piece more than anything though, so hopefully there weren't many of these protruding from the front of Japanese PS2s back in the day. Interact is back at it again with more gimmicky memory cards. This time it's the character memory cards for the PS1 and the N64. You add your choice of Lara Croft, Duke Nukem, or Goldberg molded onto the shell of a standard PS1 memory card, and just Duke Nukem or Goldberg for the N64 memory cards. Just like the sports memory cards we talked about earlier, these character cards are all show with the same capacity as a normal N64 or PS1 memory card. They're huge too. The PS1 cards are just one long card that protrudes far out of the memory card slot, and the N64 ones are in an L shape, so the character is staring right back at you from the top of your N64 controller. I have to admit that at least they look kind of cool, but the novelty would probably wear off pretty quick. I can't see any modern gaming peripheral branded with these three characters being remotely popular today. These are very much products of their time, so I have to give them bonus points there. Next up is the GameCube Microphone. Now I'm cheating a little bit here since it is a peripheral, but it plugs into the memory card slot, so I'll count it. The microphone plug resembles a longer and thicker GameCube memory card, wired to a gray microphone with one green rubber button. The GameCube Microphone continues Nintendo's microphone tradition, starting with the Famicom's built-in microphone. It supported a handful of GameCube games, including Mario Party 6 and 7, Karaoke Revolution, Odama, and Chibi Robo. This was released towards the end of the GameCube's life. It didn't get much love back then, and doesn't really get talked about much today either. That memory card connector always intrigued me though. Last up is the Nintendo 64 Bio Sensor. Again, this isn't a memory card, but it connects via the memory card slot, and it's just so strange I had to talk about it. The Bio Sensor resembles a traditional N64 controller pack that is wired to a plastic clip. It was released exclusively in Japan and is compatible with one game only, Tetris 64. The plastic clip attaches to a player's ear and allows simpler or more complex tetrominos to drop in-game depending on the player's heart rate. So theoretically, if you're calm, there are simpler shapes dropping, and more complex ones if your heart rate increases. It's very similar to the ill-fated Wii Vitality Sensor, except the N64 Bio Sensor isn't vaporware. This thing actually was released. It's a pretty cool idea that seems to allow for some immersive and stressful Tetris 64 gameplay. It's just the kind of weird and crazy stuff I would expect from a Japanese exclusive peripheral. Too bad they're so expensive, or else I'd be all over this one. And that was my list of weirdest video game console memory cards. I know I strayed off the dedicated memory cards a little bit here, but some of those were just too cool to pass up. What did you guys think? Did you agree with my list? Was there anything I missed? Please be sure to let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you all so much for watching Retro Game Addict. I really do appreciate you all. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you on the next one.